Hey everybody, Shelly here. I want to talk to you today about what artists are thinking about while painting. I'm going to have this discussion with you while I'm working on the face of my very large figurative painting called In Good Hands. This is a 40 by 60. It's pretty large canvas, but we're going to focus on just painting the face today while I have a little talk with you about what artists think while painting. So here we go. The first thing that I'm thinking about is what direction is the light coming from? So in this painting, the light's coming from above on the right. So with that in mind, I'm always thinking, okay, how is the form that I am right now painting being depicted by the light source that's hitting it? So for instance, this eye is kind of in an indented light eye socket area. So the light's not going to be quite so bright into this eye area. The nose is coming out and it's blocking some of the light from going inside and really shining brightly on that eye. And also, I'm thinking about what is the light source. So in this situation, we are outside, it's a bright sunny day. So the light's going to be intense. There's going to be some pretty hard shadows, and there's going to be some really bright highlights. So since we said the light was near the top right, the brightest, lightest part of the face is going to be the upper forehead. So we're going to be seeing and making sure that we put in those really bright, whitish, sunny highlights. I don't really think I'm going to paint them with white. It's going to be more of a bright, light yellow. And I think that's the other thing that is important to be thinking about while you're painting. So when you're dipping into your palette, what is the temperature of the paint that needs to go down in my next brush stroke? So thinking again about the light source, it's a bright sunny day. The temperature of the bright areas I'm going to depict as somewhat cool but very light. So a lighter yellow, which when you think yellow you may think warm, but yellow does have a warm version and a cool version. And in keeping with tradition, I want my shadows to be warm and my light areas to be cool. But I do want to really highlight the thought that it's bright sunlight shining on this face. So I want to paint a bit of a light yellow in those bright sunny areas. And then when we move into more shadow areas, I'm going to be thinking about keeping it warm and in a little bit more of that reddish color. Now, what do you do about the mid-value areas? The areas of the face that are running parallel to the light source. So if you think about the planes of the face, and if you have the light shining down from the top right, there's going to be a plane of the face that's facing the light directly. Those are going to be your bright, light yellowish, light pinkish colors. And then you have the plane that's running parallel where the light's traveling in the same direction as that plane. Those planes are going to be depicted in neutral colors and in mid-value tones. They're not receiving the light directly, but they're also not in the shadow. And those areas will be depicted with that neutral color, and that way it'll help you read and understand the form. For instance, the front plane of that cheek that I'm painting now, that needs to be a bit neutral because that top part of the cheek is running parallel to the light. And then as it starts to turn away from the light, the initial turn is where you're going to have your brightest color, your most saturated color, and then it's going to turn down into a warm red shadow color. And those values are going to get darker and darker as you turning away from the light. But a lot of people forget that the planes that are parallel to the light source need to be mid-value and in a more neutral color. Temperature wise, you can play around with that. It could be warm, it could be cool. Just kind of see with your eye what is looking best, and then I say go with that. A lot of times I'll put down a brush stroke, and if the temperature didn't look right to me, then I'll just go right over top of it with the opposite temperature and then see which one I like. And the brush stroke that wins gets to stay. Hey, if you're getting some value out of the video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel if you can interact, and also it helps me because then I know you're liking the kind of videos that I'm making. And if you feel inclined to hit the thumbs down button, that's fine, but it'd be awesome if you guys could leave in the comments why you're doing it. And then that way I can improve. I want to make videos that you want to give a thumbs up to. So help me out there. Just tell me in the comments what I can do to make my next video better. Awesome, thanks. Also in the description, you'll find some links to some free tutorial videos on painting eyes, my 6 painting questions to help you kind of check your thought process like I'm talking about here. You can go through these 6 questions while you're painting. I like to keep it next to my easel to remind me to think about these things. And if you want to paint along with me brushstroke by brushstroke, check out my website. And if you're looking for a little extra help and some instruction, you can go to sjcportraitcourse.com. Here you'll find a nice selection of portrait courses to choose from, and even a free course on how to start your portraits. Okay, so back to painting the face. I'm also constantly thinking about what structures are more receded and what structures are more coming forward closer to the viewer. And in thinking about the way that the structures are building up, you want to imagine the light coming down and hitting those structures, and you want to portray the ones that are closest to the viewer with the lightest values and also the most contrast. That's going to pull the eye to those light areas. You can control the way that someone looks at your painting by controlling the contrast. So if you have a painting and you want to pull the viewer's eye into the painting at a certain point and then guide it through the painting in a certain direction, you do that with contrast. And a lot of times I want my eyes to be the focal point, the place where the person views first. So I will put the most contrast around the eye in that face area. So also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That also helps me out, and knowing that you guys are liking what I'm doing and you want me to keep making these videos. So a lot of times you'll see little highlights in the eye near the pupil. Now, with the way that my hair's coming forward on this face, I feel like you're just not going to have a very bright highlight in the eye, if at all. So I'm thinking I'm not going to be putting the little catch light in the iris next to the pupil. I'm going to play around with it. I'm going to put one in. If I don't like it, I'll just slowly start taking it away and we'll see where we end up. But I am thinking along those lines because those eyes are so set into the head and the light's just really not hitting them like it would if the light were a little bit more to the front of the face, which occurs in typical portrait lighting setups. So these are the things that you should be thinking about while you're painting. Now, occasionally, any artist, your mind's going to wander and you're going to think about other things, but come back to it. Come back to the thought process of value, form, light direction, correct color, correct chroma, correct transitions. Edges are another thing that I'm often thinking about. You want to have a nice variety of edges throughout your painting. You want to have some sharp, some blurred, and some broken. I'm especially fond of the broken edge, but you also want to try not to overdo any one particular effect. And you want to also paint in your highlights. The more miserly you can be with laying in your highlights, probably the better off your portrait's going to end up. And in thinking about the correct chroma, being that this face is in really bright sunlight, I feel like that I can push the chroma up just in the areas where it's moving right into the shadow area. It's just left the neutral zone and it's turning into a shadow. That line, sometimes it's called like the bedbug line, I've heard. The other descriptives to that particular spot escape me at the moment, but it's where the transition's happening. You're moving from neutral to the shadow. So those areas can be really highly saturated. And so I'm using a mixture of like a CAD light and CAD red light, CAD yellow, medium, and a little touch of white. So it's just this really beautiful kind of corally, fleshy, peachy color with just a ton of saturation. And now that's a little bit out of my comfort zone, because when I first started painting skin tones, I used to put down too much saturation, too much color, and I had to learn to put in more neutrals and understand that the neutral areas that are parallel to the light source need to be painted as such. And I would often paint the entire face full of chroma, full of color. I do like color, so it was just natural for me. But in order to have a more timeless, a more classic look and feel to a portrait, you want to tone down the saturation. Just saying. Yeah, so there's that. So I am thinking, okay, I'm pushing the saturation, but only in these tiny little areas. Then I'm coming into my neutral zones, and then I'm coming into my cooler light zones. So those saturation areas are going to be specifically planned out and kept to a minimum. Hey, I'd love to know if you guys are having any questions. Put them in the comments and I will be sure to answer them for you. It'd be so great if this video was live and you guys were asking them on the fly and I was answering them right away. That's always fun. I do enjoy that. Like in the time before the coronavirus, when we were doing live workshops and you could interact, that was really nice. A nice feeling and a nice way to help people really understand the information on the spot. But I would love it if you guys leave some questions and I will let you know the answers. So one of the other things that I was thinking about while painting this is how much of a brush stroke effect do I want to leave? Now, I'm not I don't really care for those super smooth portraits that just don't look like a painting, look more like a photograph. That's all fine and great. If you like that, that's awesome. I prefer a more painterly approach, but I like a balance. So I'm trying to find that balance when I'm laying in the brush strokes. And if it looks too brushy, then I'll continue to go over the brush strokes. And I'm trying to lay them down where I'm not going back and forth over one particular area for 5 or 6 brush marks. I'm trying to just lay it down in 1 or 2 motions and then dip back into my palette, get some fresh paint, fresh color, and then lay it down again. And that way it almost feels like sculpting when you paint in that manner, because each brush stroke is like a little sculpting stroke. You're sculpting the form using the color, the value, the chroma, all that things we are thinking about, and laying that paint down in a manner so that it just kind of stands there on its own. And then the way that you get the smoothness is you just keep coming over the edges. You're overlapping the brush strokes just slightly Or if you don't like the color or value of a brushstroke, you can go right on top of it with the correct color or value. But I am always thinking about, am I happy with the brushy, painterly look that is occurring? And finally, when you can see no more areas to improve upon, you lay in your signature. And here you go, the final painting in good hands. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave me some comments, and I'll see you in the next one.